Welcome to A Traveller
and a Countryman podcast.
Over, calling Sparky Ray Corcoran. Can all units please call out Sparky Ray Corcoran? Are we ready to go?
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?
Shut the fuck up!
Welcome to episode 45 of Traveller and a Countryman podcast. Welcome to episode 12 of the Fresh Batch.
Are we recording now, Dean? First, we'll be recording as soon as you start a bit of an introduction, yeah right? Now, then we'll, in the middle of all of this...
I've never had a guest fucking do this before.
You can't help it.
Sparky, can I just say one thing to you, my friend? In the middle of all of this, will you bring up a little bit about the flats? Because I want to tell you a small bit about the flats.
I'm keeping all this in.
What would you want?
Are you ready?
Yeah. We have a whopper guest today.
No, hold on a minute, right?
Sparky's all excited.
So I said to Dean last week, I'm going to invite a guest, but I'm not going to tell you who it is, right? So our guest is Martin Stokes from A Traveller and a Countryman podcast. I said to Martin, come on, we wind Dean up. I said, look, I'll tell him we have this guest, right? I kept telling Dean the guest was a female. She's not able to go tonight. She can come tomorrow night. She's so then, well, he said he knew today when he met you and you were all hyper, but that's all right, you know.
He didn't. He's guessing. Did he tell you afterwards?
He said that he knew it was you, but I
Did
don't
he tell
think
you beforehand he knew?
No.
Or then he didn't know?
I said to him, in his head, we were going to record our podcast tonight,
Right.
Traveller and a Countryman, and I said, I can't do it. I'm doing one with Sparky, and I'd seen the look in his eyes like there was something, because otherwise he would have been, the blood would have drained out of him going, you're putting Sparky ahead of me.
That's a great Traveller accent there.
Oh, it's not
isn't
bad.
it?
Hanging around with Martin, do you want to hear his dub accent?
Go on, Martin.
Yeah. Do that one, Martin.
Yeah.
I'll leave it out.
I work with young travellers all the time, and I'm always saying to them, you know, I'd be talking to them like in the traveller accent, and I don't know whether that's offensive or not, but anyhow, I'd be talking to them, right, and say, you know, and they'd be joking with them, and they'd be slagging me then, and then I'd say to them, well, tell me in my accent then, you know, and the way they do it, like they live 2 doors away from Dublin. They live in Dublin.
They are
But they're
Dubliners.
so immersed in traveller in their families and all that. There's a young that joined the club last week. He was born and reared in England, right? Yes. He hasn't got one English accent, one tiny slither of an English accent, right?
Right.
His accent is pure traveller.
What is the Traveller accent?
I don't know. I
When you do it, what do you do? Give us a sample of it.
No, I'm not doing it.
That's it, Winnie. It's up there.
So it's high, isn't it? It's high.
It's kind of up there. Some of them is high, some of them is low, mammy. But then you get the big ones that talk a bit
It's
like
not mammy, it's mummy.
mommy. You get the
Mommy.
big ones that talk a bit like Elvis Presley.
But then there's a real rough one like that. Do you ever hear that fella? He has a kind of a husky voice.
I'd be into him. I'd get a squeeze
Yeah, that
off
was
him.
okay. That was actually better than I can even do it, actually.
Now, I just want to say something as well. There's 3 different accents in Ballymun. Well, there's 4 including Traveller, right?
Right. Sparky, I have to correct you now. You made that sound like travellers were excluded in Ballymun. You said there's 4 including travellers.
And he said at the start that these lads were Dublin lads. The Travellers are Dublin lads. The Travellers are as Irish as you
Yeah.
are.
They are, exactly. But
This
what
is
I'm
your
saying-
prejudice coming up.
No, it's just Martin getting sensitive. But look. No, come here.
This is a weird dynamic for me because I'm in both camps. I've
No,
a
we
foot
actually,
in both camps.
the reason why we done this was we wanted to gang up on you.
In November, on November the 24th, in the Access, the 3 of us are doing this show live together
That's
in front
right.
of an audience.
That's right.
So it'll be me and Martin and a guest, and me and you and a guest, and then probably the 3 of us on the stage singing,
Oh, man,
singing a song.
Thanks for letting me know, Dean.
Is there different Traveller accents, Martin? Like,
When you say different traveller accent,
I'll tell you about my ignorance, right? So I was standing at the door waiting for you, right? And this is my little prejudice in my mind
Yeah,
that,
go on.
that I'm not aware of. But then when it came up,
hit me with
I
a
was
Sparky.
looking out for a Peugeot because I was thinking all travellers drive Peugeots. right?
Whoa, yes.
So you turned up in an Octavia.
Wow,
you want the
Octavia. Sorry, it's superb.
You turned up in a Skoda. Oh, superb.
Wow,
Sorry.
again.
So there you go, even worse.
Better.
And then, what was the other one that I had? I had another little prejudice while I was waiting at the...
So, Sparky, where did you get this prejudice about a Peugeot? What's the story with the Peugeot?
Oh, you were saying Peugeot when I say, you say Peugeot, I say
Puget.
Peugeot.
Yeah, I've heard people call a Peugeot Puget.
Yeah, I thought travellers all drove Peugeots.
Where did you get that from, Sparky? Come on.
Well, I walk in the centre and I look out the window and I see all the traveller cars parked along the line. They're all Peugeots.
I'm not saying you're lying. You're saying you have that prejudice.
That's
but
one,
I find it hard to believe.
that was one prejudice I had.
So where about do you work now? Where would you see all of this?
Well, I just noticed they all have Peugeot badges.
Are you sure
on
that's
there.
not a Peugeot dealers you work facing? No? That garage across the road, he sells all Peugeots.
There's a few dealers, all right, but they're not fucking car dealers.
There's a couple of pure
Go on, the
dealers.
Sparky, huh? Is that how you look out the other window?
Martin, that's in his own estate. Don't mind him.
That is
Right.
discriminating against country people.
Yeah.
So,
Sparky's in the middle class drug
Sparky,
section.
let me remind you that you told me before we came on here, you said you have a million questions to ask.
I have loads of questions. So, traveller access. So, I always thought, I'm in college, we say, with Pa Riley, and I said to Pa one day, do you know this traveller? And I mentioned this fella's
Yeah, you
name.
told me
And he's
about it,
like,
yeah.
He said, I don't know every single traveller in Ireland.
Exactly.
But in my head,
I got to meet him anyway.
in my head, he's a nice fella, isn't he?
Yeah,
Pa?
lovely-
He's
lovely
a
man.
gas man. He's
Lovely
he's a
man.
funny fella. But in my head, you all knew each other. Or you were all like,
But Sparky, was this since you were young, or what's the story like?
when I was young, I thought the travellers all kind of knew each other. And then I remember I was on the boat going over to England one time, and there was travellers on from Ballymun, and we were having the crack, you know. And these other travellers came over, and I knew they were travellers, right?
Yeah.
And I said to your man, I said to the traveller from Ballymun, are they your mates or something? And he goes, who? He's like, who are you? I said, them lads there, those travellers. And he's like, they're not travellers. Are they travellers? He didn't see it. But he didn't see what I seen. So it was my prejudice. It was my inner, wherever it was.
Why are
right?
they travellers?
Yeah, they were travellers, yeah. But
So it wasn't a prejudice then, it was just an observation.
I don't know what it was, but he didn't see it, what I did. But yet again, I'd be good mates with John Connors, right?
Yeah.
And me and John, we'd be talking about different things and about, travellers and about different cultures within travellers. Like what I'm saying, I don't know if it's a culture, but different things that me saying all travellers buy Peugeots, right?
It's probably all they can afford these days anyway, Sparky, because they used to drive Toyotas.
The Pecker even sings about it, an old Escort fan, like, you know.
Escort years ago, yes.
That's years ago. And then there was
Yeah.
Hoyes fans. And I always remember, do you know what I used to love, Martin? I used to love seeing a woman driving a Hoyes fan. It's that gas, isn't it, you know?
No, I know I can't go back far enough to say that I remember a change from when travellers were, say, had the horse and cart or the wagon, right? Yeah, that would have been a big thing back then, but of course I was only very, very young. But it was a change from horse-drawn to propelled vehicle, if you like. Yeah, the Escort fan would have been a big thing in the travellers for anyone that could afford it at the time.
I remember as a
And
child.
years later then, I stopped you from talking then, many years later, the travellers sort of got to like the Hiace van. It was a bigger van and also reliable.
But I remember travellers when I was a child who travelled, right, and used to come to an orchard beside my house. And they would have had horses. They would have, like, I'm going back 50 years ago now.
Yeah.
And they would have had covered wagons, like, you know what I mean? And there was other travellers then up in Darndale who would have sold scrap. I was talking to you about Paddy Joyce, like, you know.
Yeah.
Paddy Joyce taught me how to barter when I was about 7 or 8, you know, and he was brilliant the way he taught me, like, you know what I mean? And I always kept it with me, you know what I mean? Now, I think where Paddy Joyce was when you go up to the Darndale roundabout and turn left, he was just there. I think this was before maybe the industrial estate was there.
Yeah, probably before the road was even built along there.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because
Yeah.
the Darndale Road was always there, like, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Paddy had scrap
Do you
car.
not remember, Sparky, when all the lads used to scrap the cars on the Darndale Road?
I do remember that, yeah. I do,
Yeah, but you're saying to me, as you go off the Darndale Road, you take a left on that main road again.
yeah, that wasn't even a road then.
That's what I'm saying to you. I think that was a field back then.
But that's where we used to go. We used to go up to Paddy. And I remember saying to me dad one time, I used a derogatory term about travellers, and he said to me, you're not to ever use that word again. And I never did, and I never really did, like, you know what I mean? I never, I always remember him saying that to me, you know what I mean? I don't think my dad said travellers. I think he might have said tinkers. which was an old word that he would have had when travellers were thinkers.
Yeah, that's right.
When they worked the tin and stuff like that. I said it one day. There was travellers came around. What used to happen was the travellers used to come around to this orchard. We'd all play in our garden, but the travellers would come in and play in the garden with us, and we never discriminated, and we never went, no, go away. And my man used to give them jam and bread and all that kind of stuff, right? But the other kids were using that word, right? And I said it, and my dad said, I don't want you to use that word again, you know. Yeah, my dad was very forward thinking, like, you know what I mean. He was
very straight, like, yeah.
You'd hear about people talking about travellers, or giving out about travellers, or giving out about refugees, or giving out. My dad would always say, "Those people harm nobody," you know. The closest people I've ever seen to travellers was Mongolians. Right? They travelled. They were nomadic. They were with horses. And they were buying and selling all the time. You know what I mean?
Well, were the travellers?
No, they're Mongolian tribes people. Like,
but you're saying they were close. Did you get to? You ever seen
the Irish travellers? They were the closest I've ever seen. And then I was also in America, and I remember coming across Native Americans, right? And you know the way travellers have the jiving and the mixing and that kind of stuff. You know, the crack. They had the same. They had that exact same. And when they were looking at each other. You know the way, like, if we were together, right, and somebody came in from England or something like that, and they were talking and they were saying something, we'd look at each other with a bit of a look that'd say, "What's the story with this?" That's
strange, or that's weird, or kind of like.
What's going on with him? Like, you know what I mean? But these guys had that, and the other place that I had seen that was with travellers. Like, you know, you'd make a bit of a crack or a bit of joke about it. You know what I mean? You say, "Come on, we have a bit of crack with this fella," but you wouldn't say that out loud. You just had to give somebody a look. You know. I remember one time actually being in the middle of France, right, and I was lost, not having the language, like, you know, and we're in this little town anyhow, and we're walking along, and next thing, these two fellas came towards me, and one of them done a bit of a wink. I was like, really for a minute.
In France?
They were in France.
And it was Irish travellers?
Irish travellers, yeah, and they were travelling around. And I had the crack with the two of them, and it was great to be able to
once you heard the accent, you knew straight away.
Well, once I seen the wink, I got your man done the wink in the head. You know, how's it going? And I was like,
he was throwing all the signals, was he?
He just threw a signal. I think he seen the head on me, and he said, "This fella's Irish.
This has to be Irish," he said, yeah.
And but I was lost. I was absolutely lost, but you know, because I just couldn't communicating with the French. Like this, it was great crack talking to him. Yeah, they were gas.
So Martin, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, Dean. And thanks to Dean for pretending he wasn't having a podcast tonight.
I'm delighted that you two are sitting down in the same room chatting.
Yeah.
Because I hang out with two of yous, but there's never the twain shall meet. There's no crossover ever, you know what I mean? So I'm getting to know Martin really well as I know you. And you'd sometimes ask me about Martin and vice versa, but I'm delighted that you the two of you are here to kind of measure each other up against the person.
That's good.
I wouldn't know Martin as well as you, but I'm always comfortable in Martin's company, you know.
You're two 50-year-old Elvis.
We're chatting. We're not old fellas. Do you class yourself as an old fella, Sparky?
I think when I wake up in the morning, in my head, I'm about 17. I have a big head of hair.
Yeah.
I'm about 12 stone.
Yeah.
And, you know, I jump up out of bed and I look in the mirror and I say, "Who's that fucking bald bloke? Who's that bald fella?"
I won't be classing myself old until I grow old, to be honest about it.
I would also, and I'm joking with you now, but I have a very young outlook on life.
Yeah.
I was collecting a bit of grub. She said, "Cash or card?" And I said, "Oh, card." I said, "Your fucking cash." I said, "That's gone. That's extinct." They were having a laugh. So this fella gave me waiting to see what's coming next.
Yes.
And I was like, "Right, go on, tell us what's coming next. You won't be able to move out 5 kilometres outside where you live." And I was just looking at him and I just said, "Right, I can either go with this, right?" So I said to him, "What makes the world go round? What's the biggest thing that money?" I said, "Right, when do people spend the most money?" I said, "When they travel, when they go on holidays, right?" Yes. So you're telling me that the Illuminati or whoever who's running the world is now going to stop us from spending money? I said, "Are you off your off?" I said, "You need to change your algorithms, mate." I said, "You need to get into..."
What's the accent you were doing there? Where did you get that?
That was it. I was thinking about that, right? So that's me conspiracy theory accent. So I do.
Yeah, it's a few accents.
I have Dermot. Do you hear Dermot now?
Go on, let her rip.
So Dermot is kind of a fella who's like, "No, Martin, you can't actually put petrol into a diesel engine,
Anal retention.
you can only put a certain percentage of petrol in with diesel for it to actually work. Do you know that fella?
No.
Okay. Well,
He's a know-all.
Who is it?
It's just like a type of person, a
You know
character. You know what I mean?
Dermot.
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 But Dermot lives beside the Darsh line, and he calls the Gordie when scumbags are at his garden.
And when people put things on Facebook, he corrects them. No, that's actually not 74%. It was 75%.
It's Y-O-U-R-E, not Y-O-U-R.
Oh, was it Dermot a perfectionist, is he?
You spelled that wrong, Martin, actually.
Yes.
It's not Y-O-U-R.
It's Traveller with a capital T. Travellers don't spell their name with a lowercase t.
So that's Dermot. And then there's Paddy. Paddy, hold on a minute. Oi, hold on, I get me tricolour.
Paddy's a bloke, is he?
Hold on, I get me tricolour out of the Fiesta. I'm going to have a protest here.
I was watching Fair City, and they brought up the fascist stuff.
Did he?
And like it was a proper like dialogue, and your man was going, "You don't know what's coming around the corner with all these people coming into our country." And this fella goes, "Will you stop talking out your hole, you tick?" He said, "You've got a job, you've got a family. Will you focus on what's fucking important to you? You have no idea who they're letting in."
And that's what this fella was doing.
Oh,
He was doing
perfect.
that. He was doing it.
I wouldn't
It
be
was
a fan
him.
of Fair City, but that's the first thing I've seen on Fair City that I went, fair
Yeah.
balls, lads. Fair balls. You aren't afraid to put your bleeding money where your mouth is.
Paddy.
Paddy. Do it.
You don't know what's round the corner, I'm telling you now.
Paddy.
They're getting rid of the cash and then they're going to be able to look at all your transactions. They can look at all your transactions anyhow. in case.
Yes.
What they're doing is they're going to get 5G and 4G, and we're going to have 9G. And when there's 9G, that's it.
See, the 9G, they're going to actually cancel out the G and it's just going to be 9. And,
And 999 upside down is
666.
you're fucked. The devil has you.
It's a sign of the devil.
Mark of the beast.
And that's the other thing they do. They keep quoting the Bible. And you're like, would you ever go and read fucking Anne and Barry before you read the fucking Bible? Come on, will you?
Funny.
So
there's Dermot and there's Paddy. Do you have a
Right.
woman one?
yeah, the
Come on, right? Come on, let it out. This is a safe place.
you aren't running that properly. You know when you get people running like a summer project or something like that, and then there's always a now one that turns up to give out. You know that one, like, you know. My child. Do you do Karachi in there? No, I can't actually find her voice at the minute, but there's another deadly one, right? And that's the Mid-Atlantic guy. You ever get that guy?
Oh,
He kind of has a bit of a Mid-Atlantic, you know.
You're right.
He's kind of on the radio.
You're right.
You know him? Yeah. Where are you from in America? No, I'm actually from Donnybrook. I love accents, and I absolutely love trying to mimic accents, you know. And I don't know whether, like, the only thing I have then is, right, which is probably an Irish thing and insecurity, is I hate people trying to do my accent.
Yeah.
Even though I do accents all the time, I have a north side Dublin accent.
You do, but sometimes there's a couple of wanky things in it.
Go on, give us them.
You do, like, you know your phone voice. You have a bit of a phone voice too.
I have a phone voice, but years ago, before anybody had a phone in the house, when you got a phone, you kind of, it was a big thing, like, you know, so people used to change their accents on it. So I'll give you an example, right? Years ago, when we were going away to this adventure centre, you know, run by the VC, and I rang them and I was talking to them on the phone, and they were all the business with me, and they're like, yeah, so we have, you know, 3 rooms with 6 beds and all this kind of stuff, and these activities and all. And I was like, right, deadly, so booked in. So when I arrived down and got off the minibus, they were just looking at me and they says, is Ray here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm
It's
Ray.
the nice fella with the posh accent there.
They were expecting, this is the truth of God, they were expecting the bloke
American
in
accent.
in a suit and a briefcase.
Accent.
So then what happened was I was on the phone while I was down there, and they were like, that's the voice you done when you rang us. I don't see it.
Why did you
obviously.
change the voice when you're out?
I don't see it, Martin, but it's not something that I
What?
voluntarily do. But I
just
think
happens,
it is something
does
that I picked up from when my granny got the phone. She would have put on a bit of an accent,
Yeah.
and then in our house, our phone was never on a table. It was on the stair. It was on the second stair in the gaff. So we used to sit on the end of the stair. But I remember people's voices changing, yeah.
Martin would have no reference to what you're talking about. Stairs. What are you talking about?
I'm at the hurting his feelings.
What was that about then? Come on.
When we were growing up, where is that? It's upstairs, right?
Yeah.
So that hasn't happened for you.
Dean, I do know what a house is. I know what a stairs is.
No, I know that. But in the back of your head, the phrase is,
Yeah, but
that's
all
downstairs.
the same, I still know what a house is. And
I'm not saying you don't know what a
stairs
house is. I'm saying the phrase, when you were growing up, that's downstairs or that's upstairs. You would have never heard that phrase.
Dean, come on. I really don't know if you actually right now know what you're talking about. Just because I didn't live in a house when I was young, I did live in later years, on and off, yeah? And I do know what a stairs is, and I know what a house is.
You're getting me wrong. You're thinking I'm telling you that you don't know what stairs is. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when you were growing up,
Yeah.
you would have never heard somebody in your caravan say, that's upstairs.
If you were on holiday in a caravan, would you be using upstairs or downstairs?
We're on the same point. You said the phone was on the stairs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're thinking that Martin, who has grown up in Ballymun,
Didn't know what a stairs
In
is.
a trailer.
No. I'm not saying he didn't
Well,
know what the
that's what's
stairs
like.
was. I'm saying he wouldn't have heard that in his home. That's upstairs. That's
Dean, come here.
downstairs.
There's
Or
probably
that's
a lot
on
of
the
things you
stairs.
wouldn't hear in your home.
Run up
Whether
the
you're in a
stairs and grab
caravan or
that
a
for me
house.
there.
At least Sparky knows where I come from now. He knows.
I get that you don't
Like,
get
I'm
it.
not
but
taking offence to it, but I'm trying to make sense
I
of
get
it.
that you don't understand what I'm saying.
Sparky, I'm not taking offence, but I'm trying to make sense. And I need Dean to explain what he's, where the sensible side is in that. Come on, Dean, you got to step into this. I want you to get out of it.
So that's your little prejudice about
It's not a
travellers,
prejudice.
that they didn't have a stairs and they wouldn't know what up the stairs or under the stairs.
Not that they wouldn't know it. They wouldn't have heard it. They wouldn't have had the stairs if they were living in a caravan because there's only one floor. It's like people living in bungalows. That's exactly the example.
think
Basically, what you're
It's
saying...
like people living in bungalows wouldn't have
Dean,
the phrase,
basically what
that's
you're
downstairs,
saying is it's a
that's
word that you
upstairs.
wouldn't use every day, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm
I'm
saying.
taking you out of this now. Is that what you're trying
You're
to say?
helping me out.
I'm helping you out here now,
You're
Dean,
pulling
yeah.
me from downstairs to
I'm
upstairs.
trying to pull you out of I don't know, a nonsense comment.
Martin, I have a funny story to tell you, right?
Come on, Sparky, please do still better than Dean, will you, please? if you
So,
don't mind.
a couple of years ago, there was a couple of young women travellers come over to the club to do a programme, you know. So all the young fella travellers, the young men travellers, are always asking me to tell jokes and all that kind of stuff. But these girls heard that I had a couple of ghost stories, right? So the ghost stories I told them, Martin, were the stories that I heard as a child, right?
Right.
And they were so basic that it was so surprising to me that they were interested in them. The first story I told them was about the woman who got a doll out of, it was inherited to her or something like that, and she threw it under the stairs, right? And next thing, the child went to bed and she heard in the, Mary, I'm on the first step. Mary, I'm on the second step, right? So, and then when they get to the top step, they go, I got you, or something like that. You know, it's that simple of a story, right? They'd come in every day and say, Sparky, will you tell us that? So I told them.
The ghost story, yeah.
Right? So myself and Dean would have known Father Eamon. Did you know Father Eamon?
I knew him very well, yeah. I know you're talking about.
Eamon,
He's a couple of years gone now.
he's a couple of years gone, but he
Yeah.
could course as good as, he could
Yeah.
course with the best of them, like, you know. So he rings me one day and he goes, fuck you, Sparky.
Oh.
I'm like, what? He goes, you fucking... He was just really, really vexed, like, you know. And I'm like, hey, man, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you annoyed about? And he goes, the girls that I had told the story to had went home and told the mother the
Yeah.
story. And the mother got really, really overcome by the story.
They couldn't sleep.
And she was good. So he had to go over and bless the house. He was like, what? He remembered it from when we were kids, like, you know, Mary, I'm on the first step. But it was fucking gas, like, you know. They were absolutely, whatever way the girls told the story, they caught their imagination.
Oh, my God.
Now, they knew what that story was about, Dean. I'm on the first step, Mary. And they were travellers.
Now, Dean, see? And how's that come back, Sparky? And it's come back years and years, is it?
I can edit all this out, doesn't matter.
No. Don't edit that out. Leave
I
that
can
in.
edit what I want out.
No, you leave that in and
If you didn't get me, that's your problem.
you just walked
So
into that
what
one.
was
Dean.
your little traveller prejudices, Dean, when you were growing up? What did you kind of...
In Ballymun, I used to play on what's now St. Margaret's site. And when I was, I'd say about 8, we were kind of told, don't play over there with the travellers. It was when Hottie was pushing the Itinerancy Act.
Yeah.
So I was going, well, why can't we play with the Travellers? And then there was just like the myths started to grow there. They'll rob you, they'll take you, they're smelly. I was like, well, that's really not my experience. These lads are actually a bit of crack, and we go bleeding, hunting hares with the dogs and with throwing stones at stuff, and they're doing exactly the same stuff that I do. So then I remember the Travellers in Ballymun used to be knocking around and sharpening lawnmower blades and knives and axes. They had a little sharpening
I
trolley.
remember the wheel there.
They had a little trolley with the sharpening tools on it. They used to bring around the eggs. They used to knock on the doors and look for clothes and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was great to have in the community. It was like a resource. We could get services off them, and and vice versa.
And that's very forward thinking, and that's a bit like the way my dad would have been. Like, my dad would have kind of talked, completely different. He wouldn't have just followed that whole media stuff. Like, I remember my ma saying one day, something kind of racist, and I was like, Ma, where did you hear that? Like, and she said, it was in the Herald. And I said to her, show it to me, and it was in the Evening Herald. And that whole idea, that whole agenda of, anti anything different, like,
Anything that doesn't look and smell and taste and sound the way I do, I'm afraid of. I just have never been in that category. Like, there's a young guy from Nigeria staying in Ballymun, and I'm spending time with him. Him and his brother. His brother's an amazing footballer. Used to play at a really high level in Nigeria, and they had to leave because of people's ignorance and fears and judgment over what he represents to them. And I just don't see it. I don't buy it. I don't play that game. I'm not interested at all. I'm actually the opposite. I'm fascinated and intrigued as to what I can learn from him about myself, and what crack the two of us or the three of us can have together. That's my relationship with Martin as well. What interesting shit can we do together?
So how is he back here now then? How does he feel back here?
How is he back here?
He couldn't live in Nigeria, that's what you're saying?
He had to leave Nigeria because
he was in danger.
He was in danger. They wouldn't allow him to survive there, to live
in his
there.
own country, basically.
In his own country, yeah.
So is that's similar? No, I don't mean in a similar way, but he's being discriminated against his own people, basically.
His own people.
He's the same colour.
Yeah.
Is he living in a different lifestyle, basically?
Well, he's disabled. He's in a wheelchair.
And is this the reason that he's actually being discriminated against, because he's disabled?
Yeah. And that would be common enough in countries around the world in the last 100 years. Like, I remember stories of Romanian orphans being discriminated against because they were orphans, and they were left in these like institutions and left to their own devices. So that would be common enough.
In Ireland years ago, what they did with disabled people was they just locked them away, and they were put into institutions.
But that's what they've done in Romania to
Same
orphans
in Romania.
and disabled people. So he's here now. He wasn't fleeing a war, but his life was in danger.
Yeah.
Because so people's lives are in danger for loads of different reasons that come here. Their sexuality, their religion, their political ideology, their skin colour, loads of different reasons.
I met a couple of young fellas, and they were LGBT. They were from the LGBT community. I was talking to them, I was chatting away to them, but they were saying that they couldn't express themselves in the way that they dressed here, and they couldn't be who they were, like, you know what I mean?
Whatever country that they came from, they couldn't express themselves, their sexuality or whatever.
I'm trying to think, there is a country in Africa that it's illegal to be gay. Funnily enough, right, I would have had a fear of people who were disabled, growing up, and probably because I was never really around anybody that was disabled. My dad had told me about Christy Brown, that he knew Christy Brown, and we'd seen Christy Brown on the Late Late Show and stuff like that. But I would have had a fear of coming across people who were disabled. You know what I mean? It's only since I actually went on placement out to Bluebell this year, the community centre there, and the community centre in Bluebell really does community work, because everybody's welcome. So whether you're an alcoholic living on your own in a gaff, you're welcome. If you're disabled and you spend your life in a wheelchair and you want to come up and sing, you can come up. Everybody's welcome, whether you're a refugee from North Africa or whatever it is, right? Every single person is welcome to the community centre.
Here's my prejudice against travellers that I had, that they were violent. One of my preconceptions or a prejudice that I had, I would prejudge, and I would, especially traveller men, and the story was that they were violent. I've had this conversation with you before, Martin. I would say that a lot of traveller men would kind of be on, in their first interaction, they'd be on their back foot jabbing. There'd be a little bit of, they'd be on their back foot leaning back, but the jab is going out, and there'd be that kind of tension. But I talked to, especially John Connors, about this, and he said for him, the majority of travellers would have a fear of settled people. But so they would use this kind of false anger or false aggression to mitigate that.
Yeah, but that doesn't only happen in traveller culture. Like, I heard a story about two guys who were musicians they grew up in the circus, like, you know. So when they were moving from town to town to town, they always had to fight because they were the different lads that was in town. And I'm sure that was the same for travellers when they would have travelled around, that they would have been started on because they were different or whatever it was, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I had it here growing up. There was a thing called the Ballymun handshake. When somebody new came in, you hit them a speed loaf.
Yeah.
To kind of assert yourself.
I don't think it's anything to do with being a traveller or a settled person. You talk about fear, settlement having fear of travellers. I think, John Connors is right. Travellers would have fear of settled people also.
So that's what I'm saying.
And I agree with that.
Yeah, and I would agree with it as well. I would say the myth in my head, the prejudice in my head.
It mightn't just be about, might not just be about who you are, whether you're a traveller or a settled man. It might be the fact that you don't know the person. Like, if you're walking into town this minute now and you're a settled man, right? Countryman, I call you, yeah? And you're walking into town and you see 3 or 4 lads at a corner, yeah? And you don't know them. And maybe they have this look about them, yeah? And say they're settled lads. Would you have a fear of them? Coming out, just say you're coming out of a pub and you're coming up O'Connell Street and it's 12 o'clock or 12:30 at night and there's 4 fellas at a corner.
Of course, Barton.
And whether they're travellers or settled lads, yeah? You're not going to trust them no matter what.
Yeah, you'd have an awareness about where you are.
Chances are you won't approach them. Chances are you're probably throwing your head over your shoulder, checking are they coming around you. I want to know like that there. So you have that fear, regardless of it being a traveller or a settled man or a Nigerian man or an African man or a Chinese man, no matter what it might be. There's that fear of trust. Like, it's like, look, I ain't going down that road, kind of.
So my position on that is, you kind of, like, the advice to American tourists coming to Dublin last week was, Dublin is a certain level of a city, and like any city of that level, just be aware of where you are and where you're walking and who you're walking with, and don't be going around flashing your cash and your cameras and all that. I would apply that same logic to anywhere I am.
Yes.
But Sparky was asking me specifically, did I have a prejudice of travellers? And I didn't think I did, but I remember one I did have, which was I would have assumed 30 years ago that traveller men were aggressive. That all traveller men were aggressive. And
right.
I have learned
that they're not.
That's for the majority of travellers that I've met, that's the 100% opposite. It's a total opposite. And,
yeah, it doesn't mean all travellers are perfect.
I just want to say something here, right? You asked Dean that question, right? So my experience of Dean is, if you're walking up O'Connell Street and there's 4 blokes, Dean would probably be over hugging them 10 minutes later, like, you know.
Yeah, because he's crazy, is it?
Because he's crazy. Like, you'd be down swimming with him down on Port Marnock. Fellas coming down and putting their shoulders up kind of with the tattoos, and next thing he'd have them in a headlock and they'd be
or
bleeding.
As you'd say, I'm cracking up.
Yeah, but Dean, I think you know what Sparky is saying.
I hugged you on the way in the door. I would do that with everybody.
What Sparky is saying there, look, he makes a point about that's your nature.
Yeah,
but would your nature allow you to actually go up to a dark corner where there's 4 or 5 lads?
I'll give you an example, Martin.
Maybe having drinks on them, whatever it might be. I think it's more about trust than actually judging the person. So you're really thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about them.
So we said with David in France a couple of years back, right? And we were in, let's just say we weren't in a tourist town, but there was a fort there, remember? And we wanted to go up and see it, but we were kind of getting the vibe, don't go up there, right? Because it was a Muslim area, right? It was, right. But me and Dane, being me and Dane, went up. And when we were going up, it got very hot and we stopped at a bar. And we sat down and we had a bit of crack with the locals. Now, we couldn't speak Arabic and we couldn't speak French, but we had the crack, right? I remember walking down and I said to Dean, if you were to switch off the French, right, language and you were to kind of just squint a little bit, it was just like being in Dublin. The young fellas were wearing flip-flops, they had man bags, they were selling drugs, whatever was going on, right? And once I tuned into that and used the tools that I had in Dublin to not get beaten up, I was never afraid. Now, there was one stage where I turned the corner and there was a gang of young fellas standing there and I went, oh, and then I just settled down and kind of got into it then, and we had a bit of laugh with them. But I think to go back to what Dean was saying there, like I would have had that prejudice as well that travellers were violent, you know what I mean? Yeah. But there was also violence in the towers and the penthouse. There was also violence there was also violence with settled people.
Yeah, there was violence absolutely everywhere.
And actually, funnily enough, I never seen any violence with travellers in those situations. You know what I mean? It was always settled people. And in chippers and all that kind of stuff, the violence always seemed to come from alcohol, you know, from the...
That stereotype or that prejudice persists today, because last week I was asked to go down to a local pub with a young traveller man who was being discriminated against. He wasn't being served in a pub. And I walked in and I got treated like you would normally get treated. Actually, I got treated really, really well. And there was like 3 or 4 people serving me at once. You know what I mean? What do you want? You okay? Do you need A, B and C? And then 10 minutes later, I text this fella, do you want to come in and join me? And he came in, and within 2 minutes, he was told he wasn't getting served. He was asked to leave, and he was told the police were called. Now, this fella, if you met him, is the gentlest, nicest fella. But because he has the traveller head in him, because he has the traveller accent on him, and because people have a persistence of that prejudice, he was treated in a way that made him and me just feel sick to our stomachs.
I seen it happen to John. And it was very embarrassing, like, you know, for John, like, you know what I mean?
So I was thinking, if a gay man, if a black man, if a disabled man or a woman was in the same situation, it would be, without a stretch of imagination, the front page of the Irish Times. And that's the difference.
But Dean, I remember you were challenging, they were talking about the N-word, like, you know what I mean? And, you know, about people, you know, discriminating. And then you were saying, well, what if that was a traveller? You know what I mean?
What if it was the K word?
It was the K word, yeah, I remember that. And people just didn't get it, like, you know, and still don't get it. You know what I mean? That, you know, I think people genuinely don't want to discriminate against anybody. But for some mad reason, when it's travellers, it seems to be okay. And I hear it all the time. I hear it in my own community. I hear it in, no, not so much in Ballymun. Ballymun is very unique when it comes to travellers. Travellers and settled people have grown up in Ballymun together for years, right? And there's always a good interaction between settled people and travellers. Would you agree, Martin?
Yeah, I would, yeah.
Because I hear other travellers, I'm in college with travellers, that's not their experience. Like, and it took them a while to take to me, right? Yeah. It took them probably a year or two to take to me, and then it's only now they be like, they kind of realise that I don't have, you know, when I say I don't have prejudice against travellers, I probably do have something in my brain that I don't necessarily know it's there. Like, it's not to the front of my brain where I say, do you understand what I'm saying to you? I think we have prejudices, and I think we have stuff that's not necessarily engineered by us. You know what I mean? It comes from a snippet of that and a snippet of this, and you know, you might get a bit of that, and you know, and then you create this prejudice, like, you know. And I think the media is hugely responsible for it, and definitely 3-second TikTok videos do it for me, like, you know what I mean? Because a little tiny bit of information will make me say, oh, there's going to be a war or something like that, whatever it is. Like your man saying, you know, oh, they're taking away the cash, so we're going to be confined to 5. And if you see tiny little bits of that kind of stuff, there's loads of seeds get planted and we don't see them, right? So they're like, I actually call them stickers, right? I think sometimes, you know, and it's a positive thing as well, because, you know, we sometimes perceive that everything is negative. I would be around people who would be very, very positive towards me and positive with me. And I always say to them, every time I meet you, it's like I get a sticker, you know what I mean? And all those stickers get bigger and bigger and bigger. But that is also the same, I think, with negative stuff. You can pick up negative stickers. You can pick up bits of negative information, right? Where you're not necessarily going, that's changed my mind to think about, different people.
It's like someone telling you about another person, basically.
Yeah.
Stay away from him. He's this, he's that, and he's the other. But then when you get talking to him yourself and you realise, hold on, he's actually a nice guy. I didn't.
But it's
because we've been misled by somebody else.
That is one kind of version of it. But I think,
yes.
So let's just say Americans or something like that. You might have a prejudice or you might have a version of what Americans are in your head. Right?
Yes.
Years ago, I would have seen Americans as cheesy, dopey, white teeth and all that kind of hi. And you'd meet them at the Paddy State Parade and you say, I'm a leprechaun. They'd be like, this guy's a leprechaun.
So there's prejudice for everything. There's drug dealers, there's priests, there's guards. A big one in this community is guards. All guards are all coppers are bastards. Used to be a thing. You know what I mean? ACAB. And people would still perpetuate them. Irish people are drunks. Travellers are violent. Give us more. We have loads of them.
English are boring.
French are rude. Young people are...
Young people is another one in this country who are badly discriminated against, And then I'm thinking, right, what if you have 5 of those things? What if you're a traveller, young, traveller, disabled? You know what I mean? Imagine what it's like to have all that fucking prejudice thrown against you, I mean, there's a traveller woman who's a playwright. And she writes amazing stuff. Rosaline, And I was just listening to her.
Who grew up in St. Margaret's.
She's on a wheelchair, isn't she?
Yeah, she's in a wheelchair, yeah.
Yeah, I know her family very well.
But I was listening to her one time talking about the prejudice, and you're like, it's unbearable to hear, but yet we live a couple of 100 metres away from one of the biggest direct provision centres in the country, right? And Joe O'Connor, Sinead O'Connor's brother, did a poem on one of Stano's records. Not a poem. It's like a speech being made in 2050, right, of the Taoiseach of Ireland apologising to the Irish people about direct provision centres, right? In the future, it's a projection of a speech being made in the future, right? It shook me into action, to do something about refugees, right? And to be, what I do for refugees is very, very little, but I do something. I do, and it doesn't matter what I do. It's just something that I do on a weekly basis. And
Martin, would you, like the opposite of what Sparky asked me, would you have any prejudice for or against what you would call settled people?
Not really, no.
Like all settled people, they're A, B, and C.
No, as I said earlier on about it's not about who you are, whether you're a settled traveller, foreign, it makes no difference to me. When we were saying about is all travellers violent, it's all the same to me whether they be travellers or settled people. I would like to approach certain situations with safety no matter who they are. So for you to telling me there's a couple of lads over there and they're travellers, steer clear of them, but yet you know nothing about them. It's just that you know they're travellers. That doesn't make me dislike them just because they're travellers. Or the same for settled people. I'd be more concerned about their behaviour than being concerned about who they are. If their behaviour was bad for one reason or another, or was standing out, I'd avoid stuff like that. Not because they were travellers or settled people. And that's only a small example of about who people are and who people aren't.
It's like politicians. Sometimes it's a game of personalities, but the smart thing would be to judge them on their policies or the things that they do in a community rather than their personality or their character.
Or who they are, yes.
Or their sexuality.
Or even where they come from. So
their accent.
Again, there'd be a lot of
money they have in the bank.
That's a small example there, but there'd be a lot of examples on certain people's lives that I'd be, let's say, interested in and not interested in. But not because of who you are or where you come from. That doesn't affect me in any way whatsoever. So I don't have that mindset as a traveller anyway, I am, but I don't have this mindset about being prejudiced against somebody just because of you're a black person, or you're a white person, or you're a traveller, or you're a foreign person, it makes no difference to me who you are, where you come from. I don't have prejudice for nobody, absolutely. And on the other hand, I was never reared with it either. So I believe if there's prejudice in Ireland, especially against travellers or against other ethnic minorities, it surely had to come from somewhere. It didn't, as one would say, you didn't get it from licking the stone. It came from somewhere, probably from older people from today, back then, probably advising their kids or whatever. I don't know. Like Sparky said earlier on, stay clear of this, stay clear of that. There's a million things we need to stay clear of, without a doubt. But we don't need to point a finger specifically at a certain group. And that's
an interesting point.
That is what has been happening for decades and decades and decades. There's no doubt about that. I'm not saying that a big, bad lot of it happens today. For me, personally, I just treat everybody the same. It's all the same to me. But yes, sometimes it can come from the higher, what do you call the hierarchy, is it? It can come from there. And then it follows down the pipeline, down and down and down.
There's 2 points there. One is, yes, for me, it did come from the hierarchy. It came from Charles Haughey, for me. You know what I mean? I'd played with travellers, but then we were told nationally on the news, the travelling people are going to be assimilated and we'll have to find a solution for the travelling people.
Funny thing I find about, say, communities in general, like as a traveller, I can walk out there this minute, out of the studio, and literally salute any settlement out there. Say hello, and it doesn't mean that I have to actually integrate with them people. Like, there's no harm in nodding the head and say hello, how's things, or whatever it might be, and you're on about your business again. This is what I was getting at. Yeah, that's to me, that's public in general. Yeah, and I don't find a big lot of discrimination in that, in an everyday life. But I do believe that media, number one, governments and councils are the biggest discriminators in this country against travellers. And if they have power, if they put that power on display, let it be on paper or television screens, then there's a minority of people, public, that will follow suit and take this as an instruction. Sure, look, we have our government saying stay clear of the travellers. They're not actually saying it in plain words, but it is happening. Yeah,
they're not explicitly saying it, but it's implied in their policies.
It's implied also in their actions. A lot of their actions
funding,
also.
Their spending of the funding.
If this is clear enough for the public to see, the Irish public, well then, as we said earlier on about planting seeds in people's heads, it's very, very easy for people to see travellers in general in a different view.
Yeah, and it's like that thing that they use on the RTE. This young man was known to the Gardaí. It's a label, it's a statement that sets it up. I'm going to say this, and then the next thing I'm going to say is that
you're automatically putting a stamp on that person.
Yeah, and you're putting them down.
Whether they're what did they say? You're tried, found guilty, and convicted and sentenced all in one. It's just by that stamp there and then, because one person had power and said the word.
And there's a thing that the finger that you're pointing out at somebody, there's 3 fingers coming back at you.
There was a fire in South Africa. So basically what it was, an old abandoned council building, like Apollo House, people get in and then start renting this abandoned building to immigrants who were the poorest of the poor, and they were renting out and then the place went on fire. Lots of men, women and children died in the fire. I was listening to it this morning, and one thing was that not a lot of people cared. Not an awful lot of people really cared from that area, from there, because of who they were. And they weren't.
What were they? Were they poor?
They were migrants from a different country. They had come from across the border into there, like all migrants who were trying to seek a better existence for their children, for their families.
Yes.
To seek a better life, and they had went down there, and it was probably not that much better, but better than where they had come from, and some of the countries that they were coming from had civil wars and that going on, Not an awful lot of people cared, you know, and it was the same with the Stardust. We spoke about the Stardust before. The same with Carrick Mines, Martin, you know. Not an awful lot of people cared.
No.
You know, and there's this thing in our head, like what you're saying, known to the Gardaí, you know, from a certain area in Limerick or something like that, and people are like, oh, shit, that's Travellers or who. That's an awful thing that we carry. Like the 4 fellas or the 6 fellas that went down in the Titanic, down to have a look at the Titanic, there's an awful lot of news about them guys.
That's right, yeah.
Right? The same week, people had died on a boat trying to get from Africa, North Africa to Greece.
And there was no talk about it.
There was hardly any talk. No, people did bring it up and say, look, why are we talking about
Sparky, in
these
all
guys?
honesty, there was very, very little about it now.
But there was talk about it when the focus went on the billionaires, like, you know what I mean? They were saying, well, what about these guys? And it does come up. Does it really change our consciousness, right? Where we want to do something about a fairly sizable amount of people moving from one part of the world to this. Like, so we live in one of the richest countries in the world. I know not us here are very, very rich, but to those people, we are outstandingly rich. Like,
It was like the girls from Balsaskin Lane when I took them down to Portmarnock Beach for a swim. I said, what's it like here? And they said, basically, without being too crude about it, we're living the dream. You've no idea where we came from. We're staying in a refugee centre in the corner of Ballymun and Finglas. We don't really get out that much, and just coming down to the beach with you for 2 hours has been the highlight of our year.
So you're probably clear to them, Dean. They probably had this in their own minds that whatever life they had basically in their other countries, a big thing because you brought them down for a swim, right? But they probably had this fixture in their own minds that nobody cared about them. So it's probably more of a shock than anything else than that you to see that someone did care.
But it wasn't even them coming out with me. I said, "What's it like staying? Staying in that refugee centre?" And they said, "We're living the dream." Compared to what they came from, compared to what that young man came from, his life being threatened because of his circumstances that he had no control over. He didn't decide to be gay, disabled, black, traveller, whatever. He didn't decide any of that.
But the fact that he was, let's say, free here, if you like, it was like giving his life back to him then, wasn't it?
A lot of the people who are travelling from other countries as refugees, a lot of those people would be the more wealthy or not the more advantaged even in those countries. You know, they're more mobile and stuff like that.
They're the people whose families would have money to pay to get out.
To get them out.
To get them onto those boats and that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, what's it like for the other guys?
What's it like for the fuckers who can't, can't get out?
I remember watching...
Who can't even think of getting out.
I remember watching a program about people from Guatemala who travel on the trains. They get up on the roof of the trains and they come up into Mexico and try to get into America. And they'll do it 5-6 times in their lifetime because they'll be caught in America and then sent home, and then they'll keep going back. And the reason why is there's work. There's a few bob there. There's a life there, you know. Like, I go into town now and I see a huge diversity of people, and I love it because that's just the way I am. I love diversity, and I think I remember.
What do you mean diverse? A mixture of different cultures.
Different cultures, and
it's nice, isn't it?
It's lovely, and then
there's a different type of an atmosphere there.
Yeah, but I thought Ireland was like black and white. When in the 80s, I thought that church Ireland, and I'm not against church. I'm not against religion, or I'm not against Catholicism or anything like that. I'm actually quite tolerant of it. But the church and the Charlie Haughey's and all those, they were imposing, you know, and you felt them. You felt it there, and you went to town and everything was the same. And I often look at, you know, these Facebook pages where Dublin in the misty-eyed days, you know, all this kind of stuff, and you're like, it was shit. It was absolutely crap. And you might go, okay, Lynch's shop is gone and that chipper's gone and stuff like that. So what? The richness we have today in this country is huge. The richness of diversity, the food, the culture. I was in work today and there was about 4 or 5 Polish lads came in and did work to the roof, and they were in and out, and the crack they had, and it was, you know, it was just different. It was a different type of work ethic, a different type of, and I'd love to see that, you know, that there's difference, that we have a difference I've always been open to that, and I love being in town now. I love, like people say, Dublin City is dangerous. It's not dangerous for me. The advantage is I'm a big bloke. You know what I mean? And it probably not an awful lot of people start on me, or they don't really get much.
I think it boils down to everybody having the same level of respect for each other. That you're not looking down on them, they're not looking down at you. You're comfortable around each other. You said about when you went to Dublin, this diversity, yes?
Yes.
So we're talking about a multicultural here, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And it seems so nice in around there when you went around there, yeah.
And I'd love to see more. I'd love to see more of it in Ballymun.
Yes, absolutely. But there can be maybe lots of reasons for this happening or not happening. But I think if everybody has the same level of respect for each other, simply we have a better world. And maybe that's what creates that cool atmosphere that you've seen in and around Dublin with all the multicultural.
One of the reasons that we mightn't do that is because our own fears and insecurities. That's what I'm saying about the finger pointing now. If you're pointing the finger out at somebody, just look at your own fears, your own prejudice, your own insecurities. I'm not saying change them. I'm just saying look at them and be aware of them. You mightn't realise you have them until you're in a situation. Like a friend of mine's daughter, she was going out with a black guy, and when he found out, he kind of got the fear, or what's that black guy doing with my daughter? So that's just one example. So sometimes you don't realise it until you're in the situation. I would encourage people to put themselves in different situations and see what they're like. Lean into it. We're grand on our own when it's white Irish males who have everything. We're grand. But when the young disabled people or black people or traveller people or gay people or old people or country people or
like the Countryman,
working class people or whatever are looking for their thing, we get a little bit threatened. Because the status quo for our lives has been a little bit threatened. We've always had it. That harps back to that romantic view of Ballymun or Ireland or Dublin. It used to be great back in the 70s or the 60s or the 50s. It was for a very small amount of people. For men especially. You know, for women, it was shit back then.
Yeah, for gay people.
For gay people,
illegal.
it was illegal up until 1993. It was almost illegal to be a traveller. Do you have any questions for Sparky? Because you don't really get to hang out with him that
do
much.
you have any questions for him? Yeah, is it true that you're a brilliant singer?
It's true.
Is it true that you're top of the range with the guitar?
I wouldn't say top of the range, but I can hold the tune.
Sparky, can you play the guitar?
Can you?
That's all you need to do is play the guitar. Now, what other instruments can you play musical?
Drums, bass, ukulele.
Would you be inspired by George Formby?
I would have been when I was a kid. I actually loved him. When I loved his movies. I loved that whole working class English film. Oh, it's lovely.
Did you ever know that his father was also a singer? And
George Formby was born on my birthday, the 26th of May. That's one thing I had in common with him. But I loved him. I loved that goofy kind of Englishness.
yeah.
I loved those. I loved Sheila Delaney. I don't know whether you know who Sheila Delaney was. Sheila Delaney was a working class playwright. And she wrote a play which became a film called A Taste of Honey. She was amazing, but she was from and remained working class all her life. She was, she never changed. She would have inspired Coronation Street, all that kind of stuff. She would have.
Would the two of yous been up for doing a song in November at the live show together?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you know what song I'd love to sing with you, Martin? Campfire.
Go on, let her rip there, Sparky.
Yeah. Do you know it? Do you know the words?
No, I don't know the song, no.
So we'll have to learn it together.
I know of it.
We'll learn it. It's
Do you know any of the lyrics?
Oh, me father rises early and he makes a sup of tea. He lights the kitchen stove and then he calls me. His days are often empty, he's nothing much to do. So he sits and tells me stories of the travelling life he knew. In the evening they would meet in lonely country lane. I feel the way you'd hear a collie bark, and then they'd pass the time away with talks about the day, standing round the campfire in the dark, standing round the campfire in the dark. Oh, me mother likes the house, the hot water and the rooms.
Now we're on.
It's warm in the winter and she's handy with the broom.
Yep.
Sometimes she makes caul cannon, more often griddle bread. There's a hunger deep inside her for a travelling life that's dead. In the evening she would lift the black pots from the coals. A bit to eat she'd always remark. There'd be vessels left to clean, while children could be seen playing around the campfire in the dark. Playing around the campfire in the dark. We'd go down to the pool hall to chat up the town bureaus. Sometimes at the discos we can't get past the doors. We're still tinkers to them, and it's thrown at their ears.
Let the travellers in.
We're still the old strangers after all of these years. And I think about me own life and the way that it would be. An escort fan, a bit of Dale and a wife and a family. Thursday I collect the toll, Friday pitch and toss. But on the side I think about the traveller ways we've lost, and I wish that I could rise, wash the sleep out of these eyes, and listen to the sweet song of the lark.
Go on, Sparky.
And I wish that I could be in campfire company.
Come on, boys.
With the sound of horses moving in the dark. Isn't that a beautiful song, man?
Absolutely brilliant.
The hairs are standing up on me
You
legs.
deserve enough clap for
Paddy
that,
Houlihan
Sparky.
wrote that song. Paddy Houlihan.
Well, you're going to practice that together. You're going to meet up between now and the 24th of November. Live show. We'll have 200 people in, and we'll have maybe 3 hours of chats and songs on stage. Get your tickets very soon. A traveller and a fresh batch.
As Dean said earlier, a fresh traveller. Fresh. No, I really enjoyed this tonight now, I have to say. And I know that I was on my hunger and my love for podcasts started in this room with you guys. You've invited me on to have those conversations that we have, because I think even I have friends all my life who are travellers that I wouldn't get to ask those questions to, like, you know.
Yeah.
And that's amazing that we have a space like this that we can ask those questions, you know what I mean, and be open and
say
we
stupid
listen.
shit like travellers didn't have stairs.
Yeah, you shouldn't be putting yourself down like that, Dean. Dean,
so-
you have to understand sometimes certain questions you ask, and you have to take this into your head that you're not talking to a 3-year-old. You're talking to a 50-year-old man here who knows what a stairs is.
Martin, you're 52.
I don't know if, nearly 52. I don't know if Sparky would agree with that, but that's my opinion on it.
No, I think we're riddled with prejudice. I think we're riddled with it. I think we don't even know that we have prejudices. We don't even know that we have against, like, I remember saying it to my lecturer in college, you know, about, I grew up with a hatred of Protestants, right, in the North. I hated Protestants, and I never really met any of them. So it was a prejudice that had grown upon me, you know. One is to be brave enough to say, Jesus, I was wrong. You know, that was wrong. I don't know where I got that thing about travellers, or where I got that thing about Africans.
Be at least open to the fact that you mightn't be right all the time.
See, I think for me, I had this thing that I was the soundest fella who ever lived, right? That was one. I was absolutely sound. Everybody loved me. And the other thing is that I was completely non-prejudiced, non-racist, and then...
So basically you were Mr. Perfect in your own...
In my own mind, I thought I was sound.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I live in a world that's broken. And I'm broken. I'm a little bit broken. But I'm willing to say, oh, Jesus, I might have got that wrong. That might be wrong the way I done that. I don't know. Even, you know, Dean saying about the stairs or whatever like that, to be able to go, well, I might have been wrong there. Like, you know what I mean? That's sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, there's sometimes, like, I remember being in Morocco and I went to shake a woman's hand and she kind of stepped back away from me, like, because it's not the culture.
One of the cultures that I'm going to suggest is, for one day a week, don't see differences. Don't see labels. don't
No,
see.
do it every day of the week.
Yeah, but try it.
No. Do it every day of the week.
Yeah, but that might be a big
It
jump.
doesn't matter. Do it every day of the week. Do it all your life. Forget about the 1 day of the week. 1 day a week is not enough. So you have 7 days to abuse people, then if you like. Is that how it is?
No, what I'm saying
I
is,
don't agree with that.
What I'm saying, that's okay. What I'm saying
I
is,
think we should live naturally, treat everybody the same every day of the week.
and that's the ideal. And the stepping stones towards that is probably 1
Right,
hour,
Sparky?
1 hour a
I
week.
don't think we do it.
Don't use the labels.
You don't think you could?
You don't think?
I think we treat.
No, I said we should try.
I think we
should
treat
try.
women differently. I think we treat young people differently. I think we treat older people differently. I think we treat people who are standing behind a counter differently. We see people who are driving buses differently. And I think we get into...
Are you saying it just naturally happens?
I don't think it naturally... I just
not
think
intentionally.
I think it is part of the human thing, is that
Human
we get
weaknesses,
into
yeah.
tribes. We get into tribes and we get into... Some people become the customer and they turn into Karens, they call them. I'm not sure that's a proper name, but they turn into... They take out their venom on people who are getting paid €9 an hour and you're like, Jesus, give it a break, like, you know. I think we don't actually know we're doing it sometimes, and it's only sometimes when it's reflected back on us.
So what I'm saying, for 1 hour a week, try not do it. Try a bit where you're not your labels and they're not their labels, or you're not the identity, that you're not the traveller or you're not the North Sider. That would be the one that you would identify with, Sparky, is it?
Absolutely.
So you're not the North Sider, and that person isn't the posh fucker, and the accent isn't the thing that we're focusing on, or the colour. That it's just the person, their behaviour and the character. What you were saying earlier on, Martin.
Right, what I have to say is that as a traveller, I don't have no prejudice against the Countryman, but he does annoy me sometimes.
I resemble
Sorry,
that
Dean.
remark.
What was it you said about ghosts, Martin?
Sorry, Dean.
What did you say about ghosts? I don't believe in them.
Doesn't believe in him, but he knows he exists.
Are you going to take that out, Dean? Yeah. If you do, I won't be listening to
Are you
it.
taking the bit about the stairs?
No, he's not. He's leaving that in. He has hair. We have to rectify these things sometimes.
Don't be using the big words, Martin.
Meow.
We're going to put it out as episode 45. Let me see what episode it is, and then I'll edit
We're
that
on
in.
44 at the moment.
So we've done 44.
So this is 45.
Yeah. So
Now, Sparky, he's at the Robin your podcast. You need a man's permission first.
You
I
want
think.
to see the stuff. He puts all recordings of his old jokes.
loves
at the
himself,
end-
he does.
At the
He
end of
really loves
the
himself.
podcast. He never gives me the chance to make little.
Oh, is that right?
Make little
Does he do that to you also? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about Dean, isn't it?
It's
all about me. It's all about the Dean.
Did it.
We might bring up. We might.
It's all
Sparky, we might be able to put a few
Dean.
lines together about Dean in a small
Into
little
the
verse,
song.
in a bit of a verse, a very little verse.
ADHD,
I wouldn't be adverse to that.
EFG, LGBT,
Do that again.
ADHD.
ADHDEAN LGBTLMNOQ. That was episode 45 of Travel on the Countryman podcast.
Fresh Traveller podcast.
The Fresh Traveller podcast. Episode 12 of the Fresh Batch. Yup. See you later. One love. See you on the road.
I'll tell you one thing, Sparky, you're better than all the travellers I know. You definitely know how to push a man over the edge, don't you? Go on, love you, kid.
But you see, you out poor travelling men, you are all right. Like, you have a gift that no one else, there's not even another race of people in the world have. You can go around and rob everyone and go over to Lourdes or knock, and all your sins is forgiven. Imagine that now. All your sins is forgiven. Will you be able to bring me along one time and convert me, will you?
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?
That was a bit of fun, wasn't it?
So that's us for this episode. Traveller and a Countryman podcast. If you like it, let us know. Share it around. And we'll see you on the road.